I know a lot of folks enjoy going to YouTube and telling people they're wrong, and believe me, this is something that I wish I was wrong about, but I'm not. About a week or two ago, I started making videos talking about how things are different now in the oil markets than they have been due to the fact that in 2015, as a surprise to everyone, the U.S. repealed the ban on exporting oil. It's going to cause a dynamic in the world like we haven't seen before. It's going to be like Bizarro World. Now, as gas prices rise in this country, you'll see reports of oil prices going down. And you'll be like, wait, hold on. How does that work? What it has to do with is the U.S. making more money, not the U.S. government, U.S. oil companies making more money pumping our oil out of the ground and selling it to India or China or Russia or some other country. They were banned from doing this from 1975 to 2015. So all the rules have changed now. And strangely enough, we see this. U.S. oil exports to India soar ahead of sanctions on Iran. And you're thinking, oh, great, wonderful, fantastic. Wait. So you wouldn't think that we would be importing any oil, would we? But U.S. residual fuel oil imports increased by 35% in the first 4 months of 2018. And strangely enough, if you look down here, you're not going to believe this. U.S. East Coast residual fuel oil production was down by 1,250 barrels a day, or 3% to 42,500 barrels per day in the first 4 months of this year. As a result, drop in East Coast refinery crude runs. Venezuelan fuel oil exports to the U.S. nearly doubled in the first 4 months of 2018. Explain that. You can't. It's something that most of the U.S. will not get its head wrapped around unless you go to my videos and listen to what I'm telling you about what happened in 2014 and the real reasons behind the collapse of Venezuela. It's in this article right here. Everything I told you would happen and has happened, now confirmed. U.S. crude oil exports to India hit a record in June, and so far this year are almost double last year's total, as the Asian nation's refiners move to replace supplies from Iran and Venezuela, in a win for the current administration. Now, this goes on about our administration basically strong-arming our allies to buy our oil instead of Iranian oil. The U.S. has become a major crude exporter, sending 1.76 million barrels a day abroad in April. All told, producers and traders in the U.S. will send more than 15 million barrels of U.S. crude to India this year through July, compared with 8 million barrels in all of 2017. That's the level of increase. 15 million barrels in the first 7 months of this year versus 8 million of all of last year. That's the difference. And you can read through this article. It's on Reuters. And it'll tell you all of this. Now, let's go to my channel, June 28th, 2018, a full 14 days ago. Find the right moment here. Here we go. Is now, not the U.S., you and me, not our government, not good for us. U.S. oil companies now can get rich selling our oil to Africa, to China, even to places in South America, to India. And there won't be anything that happens in the U.S. to stop that, because those are the big taxpayers, so to speak. Those increased profits mean increased revenue to Washington. So Washington's not going to do anything to stop that, even though we might have $6, $7 a gallon oil. We'll still be exporting oil. Even though we'll be the #1 producer, we'll still be importing oil too. Because everything, the entire calculus, has changed since 2015. It's no longer about the political dynamic of how bad it is for the incumbent when oil prices or gas prices are high. Now it's going to be about U.S. oil companies making as much money as they can. Because remember, it's not you and me that pays taxes, it's them, because they're the big corporations. They're the ones paying most of the bill. So they're going to be the ones that direct this policy. And this is why Venezuela had to be attacked. Their ability to export oil had to be cratered so that we could basically take their place in the markets. Okay, we'll stop there. So I made that allegation, and everybody told me I was crazy. And here we have this article now from Reuters that talks about the U.S. specifically stepping in the case of India and taking the business that Venezuela used to have. It says it right here. Venezuelan crude shipments to Asia, meaning India here, to the Asian country, also fell 21% in the first half of this year as production has been hampered by inadequate investment, mismanagement, blah, 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 U.S. sanctions. Adding to its exports crisis, the U.S. has been increasing sanctions on various Venezuelan nationals and companies as part of a campaign to pressure socialist President Nicolas Maduro, blah, 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 to bow the knee to the IMF. Iran and Venezuela are among India's top 5 oil suppliers. They're the number, I think, 4 oil importer in the world. So this is what has gone on. This is U.S. oil companies getting together with the U.S. administration and their buddies in OPEC, destroying Venezuela, and for the simple reason that they wanted to have their customers. And this is all this is about, money. M-O-N-E-Y. It's not about socialism or the freedom for the Venezuelan people or all this other bullshit. This is simply about the U.S. deciding the winners and the losers. And you watch. Gas prices in the United States will never go down again. I'm calling it right here, calling it right now. If all of this oil you are so bragging about, talking about, oh, the U.S. has found this oil, the U.S. has found that oil. I'll say it again. That used to be good news. Oh, great, fantastic, because prior to 2015, the U.S. couldn't export it for profit. It had to be used here, had to be refined here, had to be used here. Not now. They can find all the oil in the world. They could find oil under every 50 states. They're just going to pump it out of the ground, and they're going to sell it to India, and they're going to sell it to China, and they're going to sell it to Africa. This thing with India, let me go back here real quick before we leave. It talks about them having to change the way they refine it. Because you remember the issue was with Venezuela. They had the heavy crude that had to be refined a certain way. Listen to this, some Indian refiners have finished testing runs of U.S. oil this year, often by mixing it with heavier grades those plants typically process, analysts and traders said. They really have started to make the shift. Managing Director of Energy. So India their refineries were set up for things like Venezuelan oil. And they're having to make the change. This isn't about them wanting higher grades of crude from the United States. It's because it's not available anymore. Because the U.S. attacked Venezuela. Reliance is blending lighter U.S. oil with heavier crudes from other nations, said a trader familiar with plant operations and trade flows. Guess, you know what those other nations are? Nigeria. African oil. If this article here doesn't show you clearly what has happened vis-a-vis Venezuela, the U.S. government acting on behalf of big oil, I don't know what else will. And the fact that we are importing oil here from other countries shows you clearly what the game is. And I brought this up just on this site, just so you know this isn't some kind of a leftist or right, one way or the other. This is the Hellenic Shipping News reporting this, July 10th, 2018. U.S. saw an uptick in straight-run fuel oil imports for refinery feedstock in January through April. Russia exported the most straight-run fuel oil to the United States. So we're buying Russian oil, and we're selling our oil to India. Genius. Absolutely genius. So, like I said, be prepared. Oil, $140, $150, $200 a barrel. It's never going to stop. Like, share, subscribe.